board. We will be joined in about 20 minutes by Victor Law, who is president. In the meantime, before calling the meeting to order, I'd like to thank President Schuster for allowing the board to use the facility for our meeting today. And I believe he has something he would like to say to us.
Thank you. And I should caution you.
Do you mind using a microphone?
Thank you. I want to welcome everyone. That's fine. Oh, yours isn't. I haven't seen this much tape and electronics in a long time. I just want to welcome everyone on behalf of Keck Graduate Institute. It's a pleasure to have all of you here. It's an honor. It's a great opportunity, I think, for our faculty and students and guests to help in the whole arena of pharmacy. And we, as an institution, really are proud of our School of Pharmacy and are thrilled that it is a major player, hopefully a major player in the whole profession. So it's a thrill to have all of you here. We want to welcome you. And I was really quite serious saying anytime you folks want to be here, you're welcome at KGI. And welcome
Thank
to Fairmont.
you.
So thank you.
And we have that on record now. So thank you very much, President Schuster. As I call the meeting to order, I'd like to advise all members of the public, both present or watching on the meeting's webcast, that the board is a consumer protection agency subject to the Open Meetings Act. Members of the board may be using an electronic copy of the meeting materials. Please be advised that such members are using their devices for this purpose and are not communicating with each other via email or other electronic means, we hope. I would like to remind everyone present who is interested in receiving continuing education credit to remember to sign in and out on the designated sheet in the back of the room. Without the signature, you won't get credit. The meeting's being webcast. We respectfully request that when called upon to speak, please come to the speaker's table and speak directly into the microphone. And these particular microphones have a button, and unless the green light's on, it's not working. As indicated on the agenda, the board will convene in closed session. Upon conclusion of closed session, the board will reconvene in open session and will adjourn a meeting in open session. The board does not intend to webcast the closed session portion. I thank you all for attending. I look forward to a productive meeting, and I would like to now take roll call, starting from my right.
Ricardo Sanchez, public member.
Lavanza Butler, professional member.
Amjad Khan, public member.
Alan Shad, professional member.
Greg Lippy, public member.
Maria Serpa, professional member.
Ryan Brooks, public member.
Albert Wong, professional member.
Okay, very good. Do we have any 50-year recognition people here today? Nope.
Actually done great.
Okay, great. Okay, we now have a quorum established. The board will now entertain any public comments for items not on the agenda. As individuals come forward, I'd like to remind everyone that the board may not discuss or take action on any matter raised during the public comment section that is not included on the agenda, except to decide whether to place the matter on the agenda of a future meeting. Are there any comments at this point?
Good morning, board members. Danny Martinez with the California Pharmacists Association. It's been brought to our attention that on the board's website, under the administrative hearing, the case is pending. There's a lot of information there that hasn't been updated in a long, long time. Cases that were closed years ago in some cases. We'd like to see that updated at some point. We've already gotten a few folks who've called and asked us, what is this still doing here? Their patients have been asking that as well. So just if you guys could look at that and update the administrative cases that are pending. Thank you.
Thank you, Danny. Okay. Oh,
Hi,
Bob.
Robert Stein on behalf of the California Society of Health System Pharmacists. I just want the board to be aware of a bill that is currently running through the legislature, AB 1264, which originally was sponsored by Planned Parenthood with the sole purpose of ensuring that the term prior examination did not indicate that it needed to be synchronous with the actual visit. What happened is the bill language got changed recently on the 13th of June and moved that language to the main section, which pertains to all prescribed substances. So I will read to you what it currently says and what our concerns are. So this is 2242A. Prescribing, dispensing, or furnishing dangerous drugs as defined in Section 4022 without an appropriate prior examination and medical indication constitutes unprofessional conduct. New language. An appropriate prior examination does not require a synchronous interaction between the patient and the licensee and can be achieved through the use of telehealth, including but not limited to a self-screening tool or questionnaire, provided it complies with the appropriate standard of care. The concern that we have is that this will open up internet prescribing in a way that maybe wasn't anticipated by the author here. I've been working with the author's office also to see if we can come up with some intermediate language. And our suggestion is basically to just use the words, an appropriate prior examination does not require a synchronous interaction between the patient and licensee and can be achieved through the use of telehealth, provided it complies with the appropriate standard of care. We believe that more narrowly tailored language would ensure that we're not opening up the sluices for, how shall I say, unethical practitioners to start using the internet as a method to prescribe meds. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good morning, board members. Robert Scheib, pharmacist 40275. I'd like to bring to the attention and speak of Article 14, Section 4192, which requires medical facilities to be inspected every 90 days by a staff pharmacist. I've been doing this on and off for 25 years, and generally speaking, it is not being recognized. Medical facilities are not compliant with this 4192. I showed them this pharmacy law, and they do not comply with it. And I would just like to bring it to the Board of Pharmacy that I think something should be done where they should be notified and be encouraged to take this section serious, because the majority of medical facilities, surgical centers, do not have a staff pharmacist, and they are not being inspected every 90 days as required. The few surgery centers that I do go to have expired medication often, and they do not have appropriate protocol to get rid of expired medication. It's a serious situation that needs to be addressed. There are dangerous narcotics that are left in limbo. They're just literally, as we sit here, they're just sitting around, and there's no protocol for exposure to dispose of properly. And again, I would just like to bring it to the board that I think it should be put on future agenda to be followed up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nobody else? Okay. Now I'd like to call your attention to item 4 on the board's agenda. Discussion and consideration of proposal to modify Title 16 CCR Section 1749. Within the meeting materials is a memo detailing the comments received as well as staff's response to each comment. Also within the materials are each of the comments received. I trust everyone had an opportunity to review the information, board members and others. Okay, are there any questions or comments? I would entertain a motion to approve the rulemaking at this point, or disapprove. Okay, do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Great.
So if you may, so to clarify the motion, I'm assuming the motion is to adopt the regulation language as noticed and delegate to the executive officer the authority to make technical or non-substantive changes as may be required by a control agency to complete the rulemaking file.
That's exactly what I said. Yes, thank you. Okay, any comments from public? No? All those in favor, raise your hands.
Unanimous.
Unanimous? Okay, thank you. Moving to agenda item 5, discussion and consideration of proposal to modify Title 16 CCR Section 1746.3 related to the Naloxone fact sheet. As indicated in the meeting materials, no comments were received during the public comment period. Are there any comments from members? Okay. Any comments from the public? Okay, I would entertain a motion on this. And again, why don't you state the exact motion?
So it's a suggestion for motion to be to adopt the regulation as noticed, delegate to the executive officer the authority to make technical or non-substantive changes as may be required by control agencies to complete the rulemaking file.
Great. Thank you. Do I hear a second?
I second.
Thank you. Okay, no comments from the public, so we will now vote. All those in favor, raise your hand.
Unanimous.
Unanimous. Well, we're moving quickly. Okay, we'll now consider the proposal to modify Title 16 CCR Section 1793.8 related to remote dispensing pharmacy technicians. Within the meeting materials, there's a memo detailing the comments received as well as the staff responses to each comment. Copies of each of the comments received is also within the meeting materials. I trust everyone had an opportunity to review these as well. Correct? Correct. Okay. Are there any comments by members? Comments by the public?
Actually, if Mr. Vice President, Kelsey and I had one thing that we just wanted to clarify. Do you want me to?
Okay, I'll let you do that before
So-
the public.
So just based on the discussion, I think it's in response to Pharmacist Adams' comment. There was a question about the sort of the basis. Am I loud enough? Okay. So there was a question about the basis for determining that the degree was appropriate or any bachelor's degree or that the AA degree.
Right.
And the draft response specifically calls out communication skills, but I think among the board discussion at committee were sort of other factors that I wanted to make sure that the full board is aware of, and just so we memorialize them and that they would also be reflected in the final rulemaking, which would be the evidence of obtaining the degree also reflects on the individual's diligence and ability to follow rules and organizational skills and analytical skills, and that those things were also part, I believe, of the committee's discussion about why a degree helps establish the baseline for.
So would you like to give us the wording on that?
I don't think that the board itself needs to approve that wording. It's just
Okay.
the analysis that when the final rulemaking file is prepared, that it'll also reflect those other
Okay,
items.
thank you. Steve?
Good morning. Steve Gray, representing the California Society of Health System Pharmacists, also known as CSHP. CSHP remains considerably concerned that the experiential requirement is insufficient for this particular type of pharmacy. And let me give you a little background of their thinking on that. By definition, the remote dispensing site pharmacies, the key word there is site. These are pharmacies that are in the underserved areas. That's the whole intent. And these underserved areas can be rural, and they can be suburban, and they can be urban, all of these areas. And so by the statute, you have a situation in which these pharmacies are going to be staffed only by 2 pharmacy technicians. 2 pharmacy technicians without any other kind of clerical help, because by the statute, there can be no one else in that pharmacy other than the 2 special pharmacy technicians that are supervised remotely by a pharmacist in a supervising pharmacy that could be 150 miles away.
Right.
All of that is in the statute. In those environments, especially, they're not only underserved often by pharmacies, they're underserved by medical practitioners, by social workers, by all other types of help that pharmacies in a regular area have access to, and so do their patients. And so these patients will be coming to that pharmacy as perhaps the only, quote, medical facility in their area. And we don't think that 1,000 hours is enough for a pharmacy technician to get that type of environmental experience, get the wisdom, deal with those types of problems, because by definition, they're likely to have only pharmacy experience in a well-served area, an area of another pharmacy, et cetera. So we believe that that the 1,000 hours is insufficient for the training, experience, general knowledge, how to handle security issues, how to handle patients' questions, the environment, particularly in those underserved areas. We also believe that that 1,000 hours, which is approximately a half a year, is often not enough for someone to really judge the character and the qualifications and the wisdom of such personnel, and that it probably ought to be at least double what is there. Certainly, we're not concerned about compounding, because by definition in the statute, they can't do any compounding. But there are many other things that will come to pass. So we suggest that the board consider, and I know it's been discussed at the legislative level too, in AB 690, perhaps raising the experiential requirement to be more than 1,000 hours for that.
So are you looking for a year?
And there may be a need for clarification also. I think not, but I've had people ask me this, is whether that 1,000 hours had to be in a California pharmacy, as a California pharmacy technician where you know the laws and so forth, or even in all of it in a community pharmacy where you're familiar with that type of practice, that type of environment, and so forth. And again, I stress that there is no one else in that pharmacy. There's some other things that need to be clarified. I don't mean that they need to be clarified in this regulation, but the board needs to address what do you do when you get a prescription in that pharmacy for something that pharmacy doesn't have. In a normal pharmacy, a pharmacist could transmit that prescription to another pharmacy and the patient could get taken care of. In this situation, there is no pharmacist in that pharmacy, and how is that going to be handled, et cetera. And then one final thing, it is notable that these pharmacies can only be operated under a supervising pharmacy that is owned either directly or by a majority of the stock of another pharmacist. So why do I mention that? Well, those types of pharmacies are less likely to be connected with a medical center where the technicians will have access to a medical record through a large system. These are independent pharmacies, if you will, and I use that not as a negative, but my point is it's not the same thing as if these pharmacies were part of a large medical center, because medical centers are not owned by pharmacists, government pharmacies, county and state. The statute specifically says it can't be operated by the state of California in any way. And so once again, this is an environment where the pharmacists that are supervising and the pharmacy technicians may not have access to the complete patient information that would otherwise be available to many pharmacies in this state. Those are my comments.
So if you feel that 1,000 hours isn't enough, what do you feel would be enough?
Well, we've given a lot of thought to that, and based on kind of a consensus, it should be at least double. It should be a year's experience. A year's experience to show a commitment to that profession. And remember that even though they get a AA degree in a pharmaceutical science from a junior college, that doesn't necessarily mean that they've spent that many hours in experience. As you all know, the law right now is very limited on how much experience a technician trainee can actually get inside of a pharmacy. There's a cap on that as opposed to a minimum already in the statute. It's about 200 hours, I think, and so forth.
So, Steve, a couple questions for you. One, thank you for coming up because your wisdom is always benefits this board, this body. Our goal is always protecting the public health. My question, though, is what does a pharmacist technician make a year, average salary?
Well, my knowledge about that is limited, and it's primarily limited to my experience at an organization where the pharmacists were union. And I know they made typically a little bit more there. I don't remember exactly what it is, but I think there may be somebody on the board that knows what it is. But it's usually in the range of $15 to $25 an hour,
Yes.
depending on the environment.
And the only reason I asked the question is, especially in kind of the more rural areas, we don't want to create a structure where the barrier to entry it's so intrusive for the benefit.
Right.
Right. So if someone has to put in a year versus a half a year, are we going to be able to attract these farm techs in these rural areas, or is the barrier to entry too great?
Yeah, I think that's a legitimate concern, but I'm not as concerned about that because I have considerable experience in labor relations, and I know that basically those organizations that are under a labor relations agreement, this will immediately open up a negotiation because by definition they have higher qualifications, et cetera, and also to attract people that will be willing to work in those areas, et cetera. I believe that all employers are going to have to offer more in terms, and you're also looking at people that have demonstrated that they want this as a career. One of the problems with a pharmacy technician in many pharmacies is it's not necessarily the salary, but they also get very little benefits. I think that employers who want these commitment to people to stay in these areas and have long-term and take care of those patients are going to have to offer higher compensation, and they will probably have to offer benefits in order to get consistency. Remember, you have a very serious situation. You have 2 people in that pharmacy, and only 2 people, and they can fill over 200 prescriptions a day under the statute. 1, you're going to need really sharp people there to do that, and 2, it's going to be hard to find backup people. You're going to need people that you can really count on because by definition, you can't just pull a technician from another pharmacy and send them over there because they may not have that special qualifications. I think that looking at the barrier, but this has been discussed a lot going way back to 2017. I think it just needs a little more experience, especially in that type of environment.
I agree with that.
I'm going to recommend that we defer action on this until the next meeting and see how the legislation goes. But that's my recommendation.
Can I provide a little context?
Yeah.
So when the board did its work on this, right, so the statute provided the requirements and authority for the technician to work in the remote dispensing site pharmacy. That's not what the board did. What the board was charged with doing was establishing the minimum requirements for the technicians that are working in that environment. So we did our work, and where we find ourselves is in a relatively unique position because the board initiated its rulemaking. At the same time, the legislature decided to pursue legislation to put these requirements into statute. It's my understanding that there are negotiations underway. We are not part of that, but are reassessing the requirements that are established in our proposed regulation. And so as Vice President Lippy was discussing, one of the possible things that the board might want to consider is whether or not we should delay action on this regulation at this time and wait and see what happens with the legislation. Should the legislation be enacted, it will override what the board does anyways. So it may be a little premature at this point to take action on the regulation. The negotiations, as I understand it, are fairly recent. And I think that at the time that the meeting materials were presented, we were not aware of some of the issues that are being brought forward. So it may be judicious for the board to delay its action.
But in the meantime, Danny has something to say.
I actually was going to suggest exactly what Ann said. I actually fully support that action. There are negotiations going. We are a part of those negotiations. And kind of echoing what Steve said, we are CPHA is in support of specifically 2,000 hours within 2 years. And we see that as a good balance between needing a little bit more experience versus what Ryan mentioned of, putting up unnecessary barriers of entry specifically into that profession. Although I do want to mention that given that the way it's set up, that where independent pharmacies would be able to do this, it's still within their purview to decide to hire or not hire based on what's here. This is a minimum. So, if pharmacies decide that they want more than that because they're going to be, supervising 2 remote techs, could be up to, as mentioned, 150 miles away, it's in the judgment of that pharmacist to decide whether those technicians are mature enough, because the liability will fall on the pharmacist. They're not going to take that lightly. And after we've had several conversations with various members who are interested in this, 2,000 within 2 years is where we as an organization have decided is a good and appropriate balance. But given, again, what Ann has just mentioned, what I was going to mention, I fully support a delay until the legislation action is over, because this may be a moot point at that point.
Thank you, Denny. So if the board agrees, we'll defer.
Do you need a motion?
I don't think we need a motion to defer, so unless one of you wants to suggest otherwise, I think we'll just defer. Go ahead.
While we're on the subject of cell life pharmacy, I would like to know, Ann, you have any information under what situation when there's another the area grows so well that there's another pharmacy open there with a pharmacist, under what situation that cell life pharmacy will require to have a pharmacist there?
So I think I don't want to discourage the conversation, but I do want to recognize that the item on the agenda is the regulation. So is this part of your decision about whether or not to support sort of tabling this? Okay. Do you understand the?
It's fine, but I just.
Okay.
I'm happy to talk to you off.
Since we're on the.
Yeah, do that offline. Okay. So I think our decision is to defer. And at this point, I'm going to turn the meeting over to Victor Law, our president.
Good morning, everyone. I apologize to be late. Set the wrong alarm clock this morning and got stuck with the heavy traffic. But anyway, okay, let's get back on the agenda here. I think we are right. After we finish agenda item number 6, I think we should now take a quick break to allow time to set up for the petitioner's hearings. So let's take a 5 to 10 minutes break. Okay?
So,
thank you.
Just are the petitions, were they noticed at a particular time?
10 o'clock. So what do we have?
Break may be a little longer.
Oh, okay. I was just told that the petitioner won't be here until 10 o'clock.
Well, let's check. I just need to make sure that if we told the petitioners 10 o'clock, we need to wait till 10. If they're here, it's okay. Yeah.
If they are here, then
Correct.
we could resume
So we can call them.
as soon as possible.
We can call them now.
Well,
Unless they choose.
But at least we could take a 10 minutes break right now.
Yeah.
Okay, then we'll come back and see what happens. Thank you. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. We're back in session. We move on to agenda item number 7 for the petitioners meeting. And today we have Your Honor, Administrative Law Judge Erlinda Schringer. So, Your Honor, it's all yours.
All right, thank you, Mr. Law. At this point, I am going to open the record in the matter of the petition for reduction of penalty and early termination of probation filed on behalf of Olusoji Akanwo. This is OAH case number 2019-060922, agency case number RPH 46882. Today is June 21st, 2019. It is approximately 1:30 p.m. This hearing is being held in Claremont, California. My name is Erlinda Schranger. I am an administrative law judge with the Office of Administrative Hearings, and I have been assigned to sit with the Board of Pharmacy, which is convened here today to consider this petition. May I have the appearances of counsel and the parties for the record, starting with the Attorney General's office.
Turn the microphone on, please. Sorry about that.
Your Honor, President Law, and members of the board, I'm the Weinberg of the Fenton Law Group. I'm here representing. I'm so sorry.
All right.
Herbert Weinberg of the Fenton Law Group, representing Olusoji Akanwo in his petition for early termination of probation.
All right, thank you. And let me just note that this hearing is being electronically recorded. Included among the jurisdictional documents that Ms. Tulliners is going to present is an agreement to electronic recording. And I did confirm with Mr. Weinberg and Ms. Tulliners of their agreement for electronic recording of this hearing. So, Ms. Tulliners, you may proceed with your presentation.
Thank you, Your Honor, members of the board. The Attorney General's Office is appearing today on behalf of the people of the state of California pursuant to Business and Professions Code Section 2760.1 and Government Code Section 11522. And I've submitted to mark for identification and offer into evidence as Exhibit 1 the original petition packet with accompanying documents for each of the petitions. I'd also like to mark and have admitted into evidence Exhibit 2, the agreement to electronic recording that Your Honor referenced a few moments ago.
All right. I'll mark the two documents described by Ms. Tulliners respectively as Exhibit 1 is the petition packet and Exhibit 2 is the consent for electronic recording.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now I would like to give a brief summary of the case. Petitioner was first licensed by the board on March 7, 1994. On September 9, 2015, the board filed an accusation against Petitioner alleging 2 causes for discipline: for dangerous use of alcohol and controlled substances or dangerous drugs, and for unlawful possession of controlled substances. The circumstances giving rise to these causes for discipline were that on August 16, 2014, at 1:27 a.m., Petitioner was driving his vehicle and swerving in and out of traffic lanes. When a police officer made a traffic stop on Petitioner, she smelled a strong odor of alcohol coming from Petitioner. Petitioner first denied drinking alcohol and then admitted to having 1 drink. A blood test revealed a BAC of 0.16% and the presence of amphetamine. The search of Petitioner's vehicle found a container of 100 tablets of hydrocodone 5 milligrams and acetaminophen 325 milligrams. Petitioner committed these August 2014 acts while he was still on probation for a September 2013 wet reckless conviction. That wet reckless conviction was the subject of a citation which was alleged in the accusation as a disciplinary consideration in this matter, along with a separate 2012 citation for violation of laws and regulations pertaining to the practice of pharmacy. The disciplinary considerations in the accusation also included this board's August 2013 letter of admonishment for dispensing 126 tablets on a verified prescription for 180 tablets of medication in May of 2012. Now, there's a little bit of a procedural history in this case I would just like to detail. The September 2016 administrative hearing for the 2 causes for discipline lasted 2 days. At the hearing, Petitioner denied being intoxicated when he was stopped in 2014 for swerving in lanes at 1:27 in the morning, had failed field sobriety tests, and had a blood alcohol content measured at 16%, with measurable amphetamine in his blood. He challenged the validity of the field sobriety tests and blood test at the hearing. Experts had to be called on both sides to testify about the validity of the testing. Petitioner denied having an alcohol problem. In the board's decision after rejection, effective July 3rd of 2017, petitioner's license was revoked, stayed, placed on probation for 5 years on terms and conditions. Following that, on July 31st, 2017, petitioner filed a petition for a writ of mandamus against the board. His ex parte application for an order to stay the board's disciplinary order was denied by the Superior Court on August 25th of 2017. His writ was denied last year on June 11, 2018. It is now just over a year since that time. His probation is set to expire on July 2nd of 2022. As of today, his license has been on probation for less than 2 years. Mr. Akanwo is petitioning to terminate his probation today. Of note, it is recently found that he had missed a call-in to FS Solutions for screening on June 13, 2019. Petitioner was ordered to reimburse the board its costs in the amount of $12,155, and he still owes a balance today of $5,355. I'm now prepared to proceed with questions for petitioner unless he wishes to make an opening statement.
Mr. Weinberg, do you wish to make an opening statement on behalf of your client?
I'd like to just make a brief opening statement to respond to the opening statement of Ms. Tulliner's, who said inadvertently, I'm sure, that Mr. Akanwo's blood alcohol level when stopped was 16%, and of course it was 0.16%, not 16%. With regard to the controlled substances that he was in possession in his car when he was stopped, in the hearing it was shown that Mr. Akanwo has 2 pharmacies and was legally transferring. There were statements under penalty of perjury submitted by staff in both stores that one store was out of it, the other store needed it, and so he was transferring it, and there was paperwork to accompany it. So I believe that was successfully refuted in the hearing. As with regard to the remaining funds that are due, it's not a fine, but it's the repayment of costs and attorney's fees to the board. That was taken care of yesterday. Is that correct?
No, Monday.
Monday. On Monday, a check was sent to the Board of Pharmacy, and we have, on Mr. Akanwo's, if needed, a routing slip, a copy of the check and the routing slip to show that it was in fact delivered. That's all I have to say for opening.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Weinberg. I think what we'll do now is we'll proceed with your direct examination of Mr. Akanwo after I place him under oath. And then, Ms. Tulliners, you can do a cross-examination if you wish.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Akanwo, may I have you please raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm that your testimony in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, Your Honor.
You're going to have to speak up.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. And just for the record, may I have you please state and spell your first and last name?
Olusoji Akanwo. Olusoji. Last name is Akanwo. Akanwo.
All right. Mr. Weinberg, you may proceed with your direct examination.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Akanwo. You are married?
Yes.
And do you have children?
Yes.
Okay. And how old are they?
19 and 18.
Okay. You own 2 pharmacies, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And how far apart are they?
About 150 miles, 100 miles. One is in
okay.
unincorporated city of Anza, and the other one is in San Diego, California.
And one of the pharmacies is located in a sort of a rural area, is that correct?
Yes, Anza, it's about 45 miles east of Temecula, on incorporated city in the Riverside County.
And how far from the closest pharmacy is that Anza pharmacy located?
About 45, 50 miles is the next. Anza Valley Pharmacy is the only pharmacy in Anza. And the next pharmacy is either in Temecula or Palm Springs, Palm Desert. It's about 45 miles, about an hour, 45 minutes drive, either to Temecula or Anza, or Temecula or Palm Springs.
So almost 5 years ago, you were pulled over by the Highway Patrol for allegedly driving erratically, and a subsequent test indicated a high blood alcohol level. You remember that incident?
Yes.
It was close to 5 years ago. Now, you were never prosecuted for a DUI as a result of that incident, were you?
That is correct.
Right. Do you have any idea why you were not prosecuted?
I'm not sure. The district attorney never prosecuted me. I don't know why.
Okay. Now, at that time when you were pulled over, did you believe that you were driving impaired?
I'm looking back. I might be impaired. I'm not.
Okay. All right. Now, you entered the Maximus program at the direction of the Board of Pharmacy. Is that correct?
Yes.
And did you complete that program?
Yes, please.
Right. And was there anything sent to you from that program that said that you were completed?
Yeah, the Board of Pharmacy actually sent me a documentation that I've graduated from Maximus program. I believe October or September of 2018.
And you have been, all during the period of probation, you've been subjected to laboratory alcohol testing. Is that correct?
Yes.
And approximately how often? And are these random tests?
Yes.
Okay. And approximately how often were you taking these tests?
Sometimes once a week, sometimes twice a week.
Okay. And that was all during the period of the 2 years of probation?
Yes.
Okay. And did you ever receive a negative result in a test? In other words, did you test, forgive me, it's oxymoron. Did you ever test positive for alcohol in any of those tests?
No.
Did they test you for only alcohol?
I think sometimes they do all the drugs, but...
They do a drug panel?
Yeah, drug panel.
Okay.
I think sometimes they do drug panel, sometimes they do alcohol.
Okay, but you never tested positive for anything that they tested you for?
No.
Okay. Let me ask you this. How long has it been since you consumed an alcoholic beverage?
I believe about close to 3 years since
okay.
before I started probation.
And you are alcohol-free?
Yes.
So to speak? And as you testify here today, under oath, can you affirm to those present here that you will remain alcohol-free in the future?
Yes.
I have nothing further.
All right, cross-examination, Ms. Tulliners.
Thank you. Mr. Akamo.
Microphone, please. Thank you.
Mr. Akamo, at the hearing, you deny having a problem with alcohol. Do you think that before you completed the Maximus program, you had a problem with alcohol?
No, I never had problem with alcohol. Like I said, I accept full responsibility, and I'm sorry for being reckless. While I was stopped, I had some alcohol in me, but I accept full responsibility. I'm sorry. It will never happen again. I'm very embarrassed, for being arrested for driving with alcohol. But like I said, I accept full responsibility. I'm sorry, but I don't think I have an alcohol problem because I haven't had any issue since I've been on probation with testing positive, and I've never tested positive for any alcohol or any drug.
I understand that you have had no positive results since probation began, but prior to probation, you had 2 alcohol-related driving incidents. Can you explain the circumstances of the wet reckless conviction?
The wet reckless, conviction. I listened to what the attorneys told me. We went to the best of my recollection, we went to a bar, and I believe there was like a fight or something at a bar, and everybody at the parking lot. That was the one in 2012. I believe there was a fight, so they stopped everybody at the parking lot, and the officer was arresting everybody in the parking lot. The one in 2012, and I was the attorney at that. You've never had any DUI before. There's no need in spending a lot of money fighting it, just purely for wet reckless. And that's what I did in 2012. That was when I was arrested in 2012 for the DUI, and I pleaded wet reckless. The 2014 one was I accept full responsibility. Like I said, I'm sorry. But it was a bizarre situation. I met somebody, I met a friend at the bar coming from work. I was supposed to go to work the second morning in San Diego, so I had hydrocodone in my car, taken with paperwork, legal paperwork, taken it to the other pharmacy, and we were standing with my friend and his girlfriend. We were standing in front of the bar in Rialto, California, and I saw the officer going back and forth. So as soon as I entered my car, tried to go home. I didn't drive more than maybe, I'll say less than a mile. The officer pulled me over, and they said I was driving erratically. And I said I just even left the bar, and they kept me there waiting for almost, I'll say maybe 45 minutes, an hour, called backup police. And I keep telling him I'm a pharmacist, I'm going home, I have this. Then she keep insisting, why do you have hydrocodone medication in your car without a label? I said, this is the transfer document. I'm a pharmacist. I'm taking it to my other pharmacy the second morning. She didn't bother to believe that I was a pharmacist. She kept going, it looks like you're going to go sell the hydrocodone. I said, this is the documentation. So I was arrested, and I retained a criminal attorney. I'm sorry, I accept full responsibility, like I keep saying. I was embarrassed for even to be in that situation. Then I retained a criminal attorney, and the criminal attorney subpoenaed Rialto Police Department 3 times to give us the video of the stop and the police reports for that stop. They did not respond. And they never responded, and I was never prosecuted. I didn't know what happened, and my criminal attorney told me, I don't know what happened. We requested the police documents, the police video stop. They didn't respond. Maybe they have a problem with the stop, but you were not prosecuted. And then I got the accusation from the Board of Pharmacy. But like I said, I'm even ashamed. I'm sorry for even being in that situation, being arrested, regardless I was prosecuted or not, but it will never happen again. I believe it was a little bit reckless on my part, but I'm sorry.
Thank you. You testified that you haven't had a drink for about 3 years. Do you have a specific sobriety date?
Immediately, Mr. Weinberg was here. Immediately, I had the accusation. Mr. Weinberg advised me and said, I want you to stop any alcohol. So that's why I said over 3 years. Says before you get through this case, I don't want you to have anything with alcohol. Don't take any chances. So I can't remember the specific date, but I believe before we started the hearing, Mr. Weinberg advised me that I don't want you to do anything with alcohol or any drugs, not to mess up with this hearing that you're going to. So that's why I said over 3 years. I haven't,
And in addition to Maximus, do you attend any kind of AA meetings or have a sponsor for alcohol?
No, I was never requested to attend any AA. The board did not requested me to. They just sent me to Maximus, and the Dr. Skipper, Maximum said, I believe the board has the report too that he's not sure this is a clear-cut alcohol abuse situation. So I'll just make sure for 1 year from the date, if you don't have any alcohol incidents, I believe you shouldn't be in this program anyway. So test for 1 year from 2017 to 2018. If you don't have any positive tests, we'll recommend you to be out of Maximus, and that's what happened.
So on July 3rd, you will have completed 2 years of the 5-year probation, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
So if being on probation for 5 years with this testing requirement allowed you to keep your license in the first place so you could practice, if your probation is terminated, can you tell us how the board would be able to monitor whether you remain sober in the future?
I mean, the board is the board is free to test me. I've never been impaired on the job. I drive I believe I drive at least 350 miles every day for the last 21 years to work. I've never been in an auto accident. And my employees testified at the hearing. They've never seen me impaired. So driving at least 300 miles every day for the last 20 years show I don't think I have a problem driving impaired or dangerous to the public.
I have no more questions at this time, Your Honor.
Any redirect, Mr. Weinberg?
I have no further questions.
All right, then at this point, I'll give opportunity to each board member to ask any questions. We'll start first with Mr. Sanchez.
I just want to say thank you for coming and congratulations on the 3 years being sober.
Thank you.
That's it.
Ms. Butler.
And I just want to chime in, Mr. Sanchez, I agree. Thank you for coming, and the fact that you haven't consumed any alcohol in the last 3 years. My question then is, do you plan to consume alcohol going forward?
No.
Thank you.
Mr. Schad.
Yes. What difference will this make, the termination of probation?
Yes, the termination of probation will really help me financially, and because right now I'm the owner of 2 pharmacies. The PBMs are giving me problems as the owner of the farm. PBMs that regulate the third parties. They give me a lot of problems about.
I understand. We've had this discussion before. So you're saying that the PBMs are considering you being on probation as some problem with the contracts, and they're refusing to pay you at certain times?
No,
It seems not like an unfair deal.
yeah, and also my pharmacy wholesalers, like some of them are refusing to sell controlled substances to the pharmacy because I'm the owner. So it's a financial impact on me personally and the business, because it's affecting the way we operate the business, because they kind of, frown on me, my license, on probation. And that's the major part of it,
Okay, that's certainly.
And also the cost of the being on probation, the testing, and also the board had to give me permission. My parents are late 80s. I have to go out of country to look at my parents. I have to get permission. It's not something I can do. It's you have to get permission from the board. I have to go to Nigeria to see my parents. I had to get permission last year to go out of country. I can't just leave with a blink of an eye. It's a process. So all those affect, the way I live my life.
Thank you.
Mr. Law.
Mr. Campbell, first I want to congratulate you for being abstained from alcohol for the last 3 years. But I do have some questions for you. I want you to be totally honest with the board. On the night of your arrest or your incident with the police, it shows that you had a blood alcohol of 0.16%, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. Then you tell me, how many drinks actually did you have to attain the 0.16 level?
Like I said, I only had, I testified at the hearing like I only had one drink. I just left work, and
I don't care what you testified before. I want you to tell me right in front of all the board members here, how many drinks have you had to attain the 0.16% alcohol?
To the best of my record, I can't recall exactly because it's been almost 5 years now. I can't recall exactly, but I know I had alcohol that day. After work, I met my friend. I can't remember exactly. To the best of my recollection, it's over 5 years. I can't say exactly I had 2 bottles of beer or 5 bottles of beer. I can't recollect, sir.
But this is not your first time. You've been drinking before, so you know to drink so much in order to attain that kind of blood level. So even as a pharmacist, you know that with one drink, you're not going to get 0.16.
That's why I indicated I'm so embarrassed and I'm sorry. I accept full responsibility.
Well, if you accept full responsibility, you have to be honest to the board. So actually, how many drinks have you had?
To be quite honest, I can't. I mean, if I tell you, oh, I remember having 7 bottles of beer, I'm fabricating it. I can't recall.
Well, because in the future, if you have had a few more drinks, what would you do again in the future? If you do meet a friend and have a few drinks, what would you have done differently?
Like I said, I will never drink and drive. It will never happen. Just like Mr. Weinberg advised me, even before we went to the hearing. He said, I don't care what you do. I want you to stay clear of alcohol. Before we went to the hearing, not even before the board gave me the decision to stay out of alcohol. And that's why I've been staying out of alcohol. And like I said, I plead to have for the board to give me another chance to prove myself so I can practice the pharmacy that I love without any restraints, but it will never happen again. I will never be in the front of the board.
But the point I'm getting to you is, even if you drink, You could have 5 drinks. There's something called taxi or Uber. I mean, you should know to make the right decision. You could have a drink, 2 drinks. It won't make any difference. As long as you don't drive, you could take a taxi home.
Yes.
That's what I'm saying. You have to know the right answers to solve the solution.
Like I said, I don't even think I'm going to drink and drive. I don't. It would never happen again. But like you said, there's all these alternative options out there now: Uber, Lyft, or taxi. But I'm not even going to get to that situation.
And by saying you bear full responsibility, meaning that you have to be totally honest. So another question I'm going to ask you. How do you account for the amphetamines on that incident? Norco, you said you're transporting from one pharmacy to the other. But I saw in the minutes there's some amphetamines involved.
Yeah, I don't know if she didn't mention it. I have a valid prescription for fentanyl, and the prescription was tendered at the hearing. The doctor sent in the prescription, even signed under an oath that he gave me the prescription for the fentanyl. It was not amphetamine. It was fentanyl that was used.
For fentanyl?
Yeah, it was fentanyl. It was fentanyl, 15 milligram. And the prescription, the doctor signed penalty of perjury and gave the copy of the prescription to the DAG when we were doing the hearing. It wasn't amphetamine. It was fentanyl.
Were you taking that consistently at that time?
No. I had a little pill because what I use, I'm trying to cut down my weight, so I take maybe in the afternoon, and that day I took a little pill, tiny pill, because I don't take a full pill because it makes you jittery. So, and I work long hours, so I took a little pill, and the doctor gave me, I have a valid prescription for it. And apart from the valid prescription, the doctor testified on the penalty of perjury that she gave me the prescription.
And are you still taking them?
No, I haven't taken any prescription because I don't want any explanation why you're taking this, so I stay clear of any prescription drugs, anything. Thank God I'm not on any medication, so I didn't take, I haven't taken any prescription drug or any alcohol since I've been on probation.
Okay. All right. No further questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Lippy,
No questions.
Ms. Serpa,
I have two questions for clarification. The status of your pharmacy license is unchanged. Your pharmacy license is not on probation. Is that correct?
The pharmacy or the
pharmacy itself?
No, the pharmacy license is not on probation.
So I'm confused when you testified that you're having trouble with wholesalers supplying medications to your pharmacy. But from what I understand, wholesalers do not track the PIC or the pharmacy owner's licensure status. So I'm confused about that.
As head of the enforcement committee, I have found out that there's peripheral damage to that the PIC is, the whole pharmacy is penalized. It's totally unfair. It has nothing to do with him personally. This is anytime the enforcement committee puts a person on a PIC on probation or an owner of a pharmacy on probation, this allows the PBMs, in my opinion, unjustly, to say that it's a breach of contract, one of these moral turpitude clauses.
Mhm.
And so it was surprising. I've asked the staff at the Board of Pharmacy to check into it. Several years ago, they could find no evidence that it happened. We've talked, but it became evident when we talked to owners on probation.
So I understand the PBM because there's contractual business arrangements, but
Right.
my question specifically is to wholesalers.
Yes, McKesson, Mr.
So wholesalers, you have a wholesaler who is using information based on your personal pharmacist license against your pharmacy license also. And I just wanted to confirm that that's what
Correct.
you said.
Yes, they will not ship. They said because your PIC and the owner and you're on probation, will stay away from controlled substance shipping to your pharmacy until you get out of probation.
Okay, I just wanted to confirm that, 'cause I hadn't heard that before. The other thing that you testified to just a few minutes ago was about some sort of travel restrictions because of your Board of Pharmacy license. And I'm unfamiliar with that. Can you give us a little bit more information about that? Because I could maybe under your criminal part of your probation, but the Board of Pharmacy, I don't believe, has any way of restricting your travel out of the country.
No, the
May I?
Judge to the side.
The terms of probation says you have to seek a permission before you get out of the country. The terms of the probation, pharmacy probation.
It does say that?
And further from the tolling standpoint, if you're
For the
not
tolling.
working 80 hours, in his case, 80 hours a month, then you're in violation.
I
of the
see. So it'd
terms
be
of the
for,
probation.
it's not just for traveling, but it's for extended travel, is what you're saying. Okay. Thank you for clarifying that.
Mr. Brooks
No questions.
and Mr. Wong.
No question.
All right. As there are no more questions from the board, we will now hear closing arguments by the attorneys if they wish to make one. Ms. Tullen-Earls, you'll go first.
Thank you. We submit on the summary of the case, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Weinberg, do you wish to give a closing statement?
Just briefly, Your Honor, thank you. The Board of Pharmacy is charged with the duty to monitor the practice of pharmacy for the protection of the public. But as made clear in the Board's own manual of disciplinary guidelines, it is not mandated to be excessively punitive. Mr. Okonwo has assumed full responsibility for his past failures, and from all available evidence, it appears that he is now fully rehabilitated. He has testified, and there's no evidence to the contrary, that he is alcohol-free. So the Board has respectfully requested to grant Mr. Okonwo's petition. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Weinberg. The matter is now submitted and will be decided by the board in closed session. We're off the record for this matter.
Thank you.
Yeah, let's take a 5 minutes break before we could have a second petitioner. And Your Honor, Administrative Law Judge Linda Schrenger, please.
We are on the record in the matter of the petition for reinstatement filed by Kent Miles, OAH case number 2019-060920, agency case number RPH 30244. Today is June 21st, 2019. It is approximately 2:16 p.m. This hearing is being held in Claremont, California. My name is Erlinda Schrenger. I am an administrative law judge with the Office of Administrative Hearings. I have been assigned to sit with the Board of Pharmacy, which is convened here today to consider this petition. May I have the appearances of counsel and the parties for the record, starting with the Attorney General's office.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Your Honor. Members of the board, Desiree Tullen-Earls, Deputy Attorney General, appearing on behalf of the people of the state of California, pursuant to Business and Professions Code Section 2760.1 and Government Code Section 11522.
And, sir, may I have you state your first and last name for the record?
My first name is Kent, K-E-N-T, and last name is Miles, M-I-L-E-S.
And, Mr. Miles, are you representing yourself here today?
I am.
Okay, and before we went on the record, I did briefly explain to you what was going to happen today, and let me just reiterate for the record. What's going to happen is Ms. Tullen-Earls is going to make a presentation first. She'll present the jurisdictional documents. Then you'll have an opportunity to present testimony under oath. Ms. Tullen-Earls, if she has any questions, will ask you questions on cross-examination. Once she has finished her questioning, each board member is then going to be given an opportunity to ask you questions. And once all that is completed, I'll ask you and Ms. Tullen-Earls if you each wish to make a closing statement. Do you understand?
Yes.
All right. Ms. Tullen-Earls, you may begin your presentation.
Thank you, Your Honor. First, I'd like to mark for identification and offer into evidence as Exhibit 1 the original petition packet with accompanying documents that has been submitted to you. The board members and petitioner already have a copy of this packet. In addition, I'd like to mark for identification and offer into evidence as Exhibit 2 the agreement to electronic recording of hearing.
All right, I will mark the documents just described by Ms. Tulliners respectively as Exhibit 1 and Exhibit 2. Those exhibits are admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now I'd like to give a summary of the case for the record. Petitioner was first licensed as a pharmacist by the board on June 8, 1976. The discipline in this case was ordered following an administrative hearing on an accusation which alleged 6 causes for discipline. The first for a September 10, 2014 conviction, which was substantially related to the qualifications, functions, and duties of a pharmacist. The second for failing to exercise corresponding responsibility. Third, for failure to review patient drug therapy and medication records. The fourth, for furnishing controlled substances without a prescription. The fifth, for failure to inventory controlled substances. And the sixth, for unprofessional conduct. The accusation also alleged 2 February 24, 2005 citations as disciplinary considerations. Each one of those citations was for failing to implement electronic monitoring of Schedule II prescriptions, and those citations were complied with at the time. Now, the September 10, 2014 conviction followed petitioner's guilty plea to 1 felony count of violating Health and Safety Code Section 11153, Subdivision A, unlawful controlled substance prescription, for which petitioner received a sentence of 36 months probation. The facts of this conviction pertain to a time period between April and May in 2013, when petitioner sold a patient over 100 fentanyl suckers or lollipops for $25 each. During the police investigation, the patient cooperated with the police in an undercover controlled buy of fentanyl suckers from the petitioner. Petitioner admitted to police officers that the patient was addicted to fentanyl and that he advanced the suckers without a prescription. The accusation also alleged that in March of 2013, Ventura County sheriffs notified petitioner that one of his patients had committed suicide. That patient was a suspected doctor shopper and had been an early refiller and received at least 7 controlled substances that were filled early by petitioner's pharmacy between June and September of 2012. The investigation revealed that 5 of the refills could have been detected if petitioner had reviewed the patient's profile. A police investigation of the cures reports for petitioner's patients and the ALJ in his findings at the hearing found numerous flags for doctor shoppers. The accusation alleged petitioner's involvement in the filling of prescriptions for 11 other patients following review of the cures report. In general, in the accusation, it shows that in periods of time between 3 to 6 months, patients receive multiple and excessive prescriptions from multiple physicians. For example, one patient received 43 prescriptions over a 6-month time period, which would suggest a daily use of 84 tablets of oxycodone. Another patient had 25 prescriptions over a 6-month time period, which indicated a daily use of 54 tablets of oxycodone. Another patient had prescriptions for hydrocodone from 22 physicians over a 4-month time period, filled among 9 pharmacies. One of them was petitioner's. A pharmacy inspector's investigation on August 7th of 2013 revealed that petitioner had last completed a controlled substance inventory more than 9 years before on April 25th, 2004, which was required to be done every 2 years. In the decision, effective December 30th of 2015, petitioner's pharmacist license was revoked, and he was ordered to reimburse the board its costs in the amount of $11,562.50. And as of my confirmation with an analyst yesterday, petitioner has not made any payments towards these costs. Notably, in the administrative law judge's findings of fact in his proposed decision, he found throughout the hearing that respondent still does not get it by insisting that his was a victimless crime when the victims were those he professed to help. Petitioner has now filed a petition for reinstatement of his license so he can take the CDE test to become a diabetic educator. And I'm now prepared to proceed with questions for the petitioner unless he wishes to make an opening statement first.
Let's see, Mr. Miles, do you wish to give a statement at this time, or shall I swear you in and you can give your testimony?
Yeah, I'd like to give my testimony, so.
All right, so Ms. Tulliners, I'll swear in the witness and then you can cross-examine. All right, Mr. Miles, please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that your testimony in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And just one more time, just state your first and last name for the record.
It's Kent Miles.
All right, you may proceed with your testimony, Mr. Miles.
Okay, thank you. I just want to mention real briefly just the one lady they're talking about who was given medicine without a prescription. She came in out of medication saying she couldn't get a hold of her doctor and he wasn't going to give her any more until she saw a new doctor at UCLA, and she had an appointment with him, but he wouldn't give her any medicine until she was seen by this doctor. And she just wanted to advance some medication to hold her till she could see her new doctor, and then promised to bring us a prescription. We first hesitated. We eventually advanced her some medication at no charge. We weren't trying to make money off this, so we did it at no charge. When the police came and asked me about it, I admitted that we had given her this medication. We weren't trying to hide anything. We just felt I had a patient in who was acting very upset, very emotional, near tears. She was on time with her medication. I felt she was starting to go through withdrawals, and at the time, I felt that was the best thing for this patient to help her out. Now I realize, that I shouldn't have done this. I should not have helped this lady out. I shouldn't have advanced her medication. That was my fault. It was my mistake, and I take full responsibility for doing that. I'm sorry I let down the board by not upholding their regulations. I've fully resolved to never let anything like this happen again. During the 38 years of having my pharmacy license before the incident, I had never been arrested by the police or sanctioned by the board for any reason. I'm the father of 5 children. We have 25 grandchildren at this time. After graduating from, I said 25, I meant 22. But after graduating from the UOP School of Pharmacy, I went to work for Save on Drugs. I worked 1 year as a staff pharmacist and 9 years as a manager. While there, I was given the Pharmacist of the Year award. Twice I helped out by managing 2 pharmacies at the same time. When I opened my own store, it was open 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. Save On allowed me to work for them evenings and on the weekends until my store was established. They only did this because they appreciated the good job I did for them. To kind of give you an idea how we ran the store, we had a little board by the cash register, and if customers came in and they didn't have the money with them or didn't have enough money for the prescription, we would normally still give them their medication and put the receipt on the board to hold it. They'd come in another day and pay for it. And if they didn't come back and pay for that medication, we just forgave the bill. We tried to be as helpful and work with the patients as they came in. In 1994, they had the Northridge earthquake, some of you might remember. It was a 6.7 trembler at 4:30 in the morning. It hit Simi Valley very hard, devastated the area. We kind of got things checked at the house, and then at 5 o'clock went down to the pharmacy, me and my older children, and started putting things back on the shelf. Everything was on the floor. And by about 10 o'clock, we had the merchandise all back on the shelves. We had a generator down there so the computer was running, had lights on, and I called the emergency rooms to tell them that we were up and running. And we had over 100 people come in that day, get prescriptions, who were hurt in the earthquake, who just couldn't find their medicine, various reasons. But for 2 days, we're the only store open in Simi Valley. Some stores even longer than that. At the end of one day, we had a masked robber come in with a gun in his hand, and He walked around behind the counter. I was kind of concerned for the two technicians that were there still working in my store when he came in. He came up, put the gun right up really close to me. When I got a chance, I kind of turned, grabbed the gun out of his hand, and started beating him on the head and chased him out of the store. Just store very important to us, so we took care of the store at all times. As far as rehabilitation, I just want to mention some things I've tried to do while I've been on suspension here. I've worked with and coached many baseball and basketball teams for 6 of my grandsons. 2 of them, Cody and Devin, are playing on their high school teams. Nixon just won the Western Area Championship in the 9-year-old division for gymnastics. Every Tuesday at 4 o'clock, I practice tennis with my granddaughter, Bree. My daughter, April, is a divorced mother raising 6 children on her own. 2 of her children, Ava and Diego, were adopted from Guatemala. I went to their house twice a week for 2 years to get them caught up on their schoolwork. Also, my daughter owns a Wayback Burger franchise on the naval base at Port Hueneme. For 6 months, I worked there for free to do marketing and to resolve staffing issues at the store. At church, I've been the welfare committee chairman. Once a month, I would help stock shelves at the Bishop's Storehouse in Sylmar. Once a week, I would see that the orders were filled and delivered to those in need. I've been a scout leader for many years. I've taught and passed off 308 merit badges to deserving scouts. For 8 months, I worked with Danny Martinez from CPHA. We worked to get better treatment for pharmacies serving the poor in Ventura County. For 2 evenings a month, I worked at the free clinic in Simi Valley. I counsel diabetics on diet, their disease, and how to keep sugar in the proper range. To further my profession, I've studied and passed the practice exam to become a certified diabetic educator. I'm not allowed to take the regular exam until my license is reinstated. If my license is restored, I will take the exam, become a certified diabetic counselor, and get a job working with diabetics. My goal is to know diabetes and its treatment so well that doctors will use me as a resource. Thanks.
Cross-examination, Ms. Tulliners.
I reviewed your petition that was submitted as part of your packet, and I note that in answer to question number 15, have you ever had disciplinary action taken against your pharmacist licensed in this state or any other state? You answered no. Can you explain that?
Yeah, I haven't had any other disciplinary action taken other than this, what we're talking about right here today. There was a couple of sanctions against the pharmacy because the Cures program not being up and running. I know I had a girl in charge of that, and she hadn't sent him in, I guess, all the time. But that was fixed, and it was a sanction wasn't against me; it was against the store.
So you took that question to mean any other disciplinary action besides this one?
Yes.
Okay. And there's an attachment to your petition that appears to be typewritten information.
Okay.
Has certain question numbers. Did you prepare this statement?
Yes.
And did you mean that to supplement your answers under penalty of perjury in your petition?
Yes.
In answer to question number 16, you said, my license was revoked starting January 1st, 2016 for 3 years. What do you mean by that?
Well, 2016, that's when I think the pharmacy stepped in and revoked my license.
But you understand your license is revoked, correct? Not just for 3 years.
Oh, I understood it to be a 3-year, that it was suspended for 3 years. That was my understanding.
Because you also used the word suspension in your testimony earlier, and I just want to be clear that you have an understanding that your license is revoked, and it is not for a set time period. Do you understand that?
Oh, okay. Then I misunderstood. I thought they had told me or it said a 3-year time period. When I've contacted them, I've talked to them, this is what they've referred to me, that I could reinstate, or I could apply for reinstatement at the first of this year, which is 3 years from that date.
Okay. And in the summary of the findings of fact found by the administrative law judge, the judge found that you had provided over 100 fentanyl suckers to patient for $25 each for a time period when she had no prescription. Now, you tried to explain that a little bit at the beginning of your testimony, that you said that she came in upset and needed an advance. Are you trying to say that on one occasion you advanced her 100 fentanyl lollipops?
Well, she was using, at the time, her prescription from the doctor, she was using 9 a day. And so I think it was 5 days, if I remember right, until she could see this new doctor. And so we based on that prescription, we advanced her enough to cover that time period. I don't remember advancing her more than that. That's all we advanced her was just enough to get through to see the new doctor. So I don't know where they got over 100. We didn't do that.
So you don't recall that it was alleged, and the findings of fact were that between April and May, over several transactions, you sold 100 fentanyl lollipops to that patient?
Yeah, we didn't sell them to her. It was an advance that she came between these two doctors, and she, in her effort to get me to help, to give her some medication, she said, "Well, let me do this," because I turned her down a few times. And I said, "No, you got to talk to your doctor." But finally, she said, "Well, let me just write you a check that you can hold, and this will just guarantee you that I'm going to bring in a prescription to you." So she wrote some checks with that price, $25 per sucker on there, and wrote these checks. But it was just something to hold to try to prove to me that she would bring that prescription in to cover those suckers that I was advancing her. It was totally in her idea, and my idea was just an advance of suckers to hold her to see her new doctor. And she really was very agitated and upset when she came in. I honestly felt she was starting to go withdrawals. And even though I knew, I was breaking regulation by advancing these to her, I felt under the circumstances that it kind of was warranted. I didn't think it would be good for her to go through withdrawals. She's an older lady in her 50s, go through withdrawals on her own without any supervised medical personnel around. When she went to the new doctor at UCLA, he put her in the hospital and got her off the suckers altogether. But that way it was in a hospital setting, which was the proper way to have it done. And I know I was wrong in advancing the suckers to her. I take full responsibility for that again, and I've made a commitment. I would be very careful to not break any of these regulations if I get, a chance to work again. But, at the time, I just felt like in this situation, it was justified. I was wrong. I did the wrong thing, but I felt there was a reason for it. I want you to understand the intent, that I was not, trying to make any money. I wasn't selling these suckers to her. I advanced her initially to her at no charge, and she wrote checks only for me to hold just as a guarantee that she'd bring that script in, and then I was just going to give her the checks back. That was the plan.
And you also stated that same statement in answer to number 16 in your supplemental response. I wasn't trying to make money on this as I advanced her the medication at no charge, correct?
That's correct.
And she gave you the checks to hold to pay for those suckers?
She gave me the checks to hold to give me a guarantee that she's going to bring me the prescription in. And when she brought me the new prescription, then I was just going to give her the checks back and run the new prescription and take the suckers out of her new prescription. She'd be getting the suckers on me once a month for almost 2 years, coming on a regular basis from her original pain doctor and getting these suckers, once a month. And, she had been real consistently doing it. I didn't have any reason to think she wasn't going to bring in the new prescription. She was promising me she was. And I just was trying to help her out. I just was trying to help somebody out that I thought was in a tough situation. I wasn't trying to make money. I wasn't trying to deceive anybody. When the police came and asked me about it, I admitted what I had done. I said, yeah, I did this, but that was my intent, was I felt with somebody in a tough situation that, I was able to help out. Tried to reach the doctor. It was late in the day when she came. I couldn't reach him. And the other doctor, she said she'd talk to him and he wouldn't give her any prescription until she was seen, which was like 5 days away. But she had an appointment with him.
So there was an issue with this patient that even though you weren't trying to take money from her or make money off of the sale, you did try to cash her checks because you sent her to collections, correct?
Well, eventually those checks were just sitting there, and Still waiting for her to come in, and quite a bit of time passed, and she never showed up, never came back, didn't come back with a new prescription. I really didn't know what had happened to her, but she had those checks that were just sitting there on the counter on our shelf. And the girls I know had tried contacting her to find out about these checks. Was she going to come back? Was she bringing the prescription? What was going on? And couldn't get a response for her. And so one of the girls then sent the checks into collections.
And do you recall that patient contacting you after that occurred and asking for more lollipops, and you requiring her to bring you $800 in cash to cover the bounce checks and to pay for the cost of 5 more lollipops at $125?
Well, she eventually called me after some period had gone by, and the girl sent those checks in. She called me and said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I haven't got back to you. I went to the hospital. I fell and broke my ribs. They had me in the hospital. That's why I haven't, been back to see you." She said, "But I have an appointment now with my doctor tomorrow. This doctor is now going to see me and give me a prescription. If I could just get 5 suckers to hold me till tomorrow, then I'll come in and, take care of everything that you've got." She said, "If you just do that, I'll come in with some cash and pay for those bounce checks. I'll come in and then pay for these suckers and then bring you a prescription tomorrow to cover the whole thing." And at this time, I was just very concerned. I wanted to get this cleared up. I wanted to get this taken care of, and so I agreed to do that. And I gave her 5 more suckers. She brought me in money for these checks that had bounced. And then the next day, she called me again and said, "Oh, I couldn't get in," and another excuse, and wanted more medication. I told her, "No, I've extended you all that I can extend you. You need to go see your doctor. I can't give you anything else."
How many times would you say that you believed her story that she was going to go to the doctor in a few days, and you advanced her the fentanyl lollipops?
Well, she gave me that story one time, the 5 days, and we advanced her medicine to those 5 days. Then I hadn't heard from her for quite a while, and then she calls me on the phone saying she's been in the hospital, and and that she hadn't gotten back to us, but she had now an appointment with her doctor tomorrow, and if I just gave her 5 more suckers, she'd get by until tomorrow, and she'd pay for the suckers that she already took, and pay for these, and then bring me a prescription tomorrow with the doctor. And again, I wanted to get this cleared up, and she was promising me this prescription from the doctor when she saw him tomorrow. And so I, shouldn't have listened to her anymore, but I listened to her one more time thinking this was going to clear it up. And then when she didn't come in the next day with the prescription, but called me again on the phone, now asking for some more, that's when I told her, "No, I've helped you all I can do. You have to have a prescription. I can't invent you anything more." And that's when I stopped giving her any more medication. But I listened to her 2 times. First time when she came in, and then when she called me on this phone about a month later saying she'd been in the hospital.
So those 2 times accounted for 100 fentanyl suckers that the police report found and the ALJ found.
Okay, I don't know where that number came from. I don't, I'd have to go back and look.
What can you tell us if you recall anything?
Sorry about that. I turned off of it. Okay, go ahead.
There was that suicide notification back in March of 2013. What can you tell us if you know anything about that patient?
Okay, I'm not sure which, because I didn't see that in the initial things. I know that they had some, they sent me a list of cases where people had gotten prescriptions from multiple doctors, and I went through and checked every one of those that the board sent me, and showed that these doctors were either all from the same group, and they were writing, that's why it looked like multiple prescriptions, but they're all from the same group, or whatever the explanation was for all the cases. I don't remember this one exactly, so I don't know.
You don't remember the patient's name?
No, I don't. Okay. Remember a suicide one, I don't remember that. Because I know there was one case where the medicine that we had dispensed was months before, a person had a problem with the medication, but so I can't respond on that one exactly.
Thank you. You submitted 14 letters of recommendation along with your petition, and the board staff could not verify 4 of those letters, and 5 of them were from family members. So of the remaining 5, there's only one from a board licensee who is not actually a family member. That's Mr. Tony Hoyle. And in the board's analyst's questioning of Mr. Hoyle, he did not know the details about how you lost your license. Can you explain how the board could give consideration to the relevancy of Mr. Hoyle's recommendation to have your license restored when he does not know the details of your discipline?
Yeah, I thought I had told Tony about it. I thought I'd explained it to him. So I'm a little surprised that he didn't feel like he knew the details because I thought I had explained it to him. So I thought he knew.
Do you have any other letters from a board licensee who is not a family member?
Yeah, because in the requirement, it just said 2 licensed, pharmacists, so I didn't know it mattered if they were family members or not.
So one of them was, you have Jesse,
Miles.
Jesse, and April is your daughter that's a tech,
Right.
and Joshua?
Joshua Miles is my son.
So you included those as your licensed recommendations?
Right.
Okay. And there was an order for cost payment of $11,562.50. What is your plan for that?
I mean, I'll pay that whenever they, are ready to reinstate my license, and I'll pay that money.
What would you do in the future to regulate what these doctor shoppers and pharmacy shoppers are doing when they're coming in with hydrocodone prescriptions and oxycodone prescriptions days apart from different doctors and short time periods?
Yeah, because we screen very carefully. If somebody comes in with a medication that's early, we don't fill it. They have to come back and do it on time. If they come in and we have any reason to suspect, that they might be going other places, we check the Cures program. We have girls that would check that. And if we find that a patient that's going to 2 different doctors, we would call the doctors. We'd just turn them away and send them somewhere else. We'd call the 2 doctors and tell them, well, this guy's getting from you, and he's also getting from this doctor over here. So the doctors could try to fix the situation.
So that would be something new that you would implement at this point?
No, that's what we always did.
Then why were all those patients that were listed in the accusation getting away with getting all those prescriptions?
Well, many of those, there was explanations for that. I know that they pulled those off the computer, and it just showed a number of prescriptions from different doctors. And one that I remember was because there's a lady who came in with cancer in her stomach, and they did a ostomy on her, and she had to go back, and she almost died. It got infected, she almost died, and she was going back to the hospital where she initially got this done, and almost every time she'd go back, she'd see a different doctor. So it showed a whole bunch of different doctors, but they're all in the same hospital, the same group that she was seeing at different times, and some were early because her pain medicine just wasn't lasting her. But we checked on those, and we knew it was from the same location. She wasn't going to different doctors in different locations. It was just she'd see a different doctor at the hospital every time she went back.
And how are you going to prevent overlapping of prescriptions?
Well, the easiest way is just to check the Cures program, and so we would do that. We would also, watch. Sometimes insurance will give you information if they're going somewhere else. Sometimes, if you have suspicions, you can look into it. Or if he shows up with 2 different, prescription from one doctor and next time from a different doctor, then many times we'd call the doctors and see if they knew what was going on about this guy's going to different doctors.
I don't have any questions more at this time, Your Honor.
All right. We'll now open up for questioning by each board member, starting. Oh, all right. We're going to start from a different direction.
Throw me off here. Okay.
All right. And we will start with Mr.
A
Wan.
for Albert. Yeah. Was it the lollipop that you give to this patient? That's the only thing? That's the only non-prescription that you feel? That without prescription?
Oh yeah, that's the only thing.
That's the only thing. But that's no
I
other
gave her.
patient.
Yeah.
No other patient you did that, right?
Right. Yeah,
And,
these are suckers.
And the 100 lollipops only last 10 days or so, right? You say the patient using 9 a
the doctor's
day?
prescription to her that she was seeing was having her take 9 of those
9
a
a day, so
9 a day.
100 sounds a lot, but it only lasts about 10 days or so, right?
Right.
And then subsequently you give her 2 more times, 5 each time, right? So total 3 times.
But she came in and she got some.
Yeah.
Initially when she came in that night,
Yeah.
and I gave her some just to last for a few days. I made her come back in a few days because I didn't want to give her a whole lot at once. So I said, well, here's for these days, and come back on this day. I'll give you a few more to hold you until she could see her new doctor. And then about a month later, she called me on the phone.
Yeah, I got that.
So, okay.
And you intend, if you get your license back, you intend to go back to practice as a pharmacist, or you just want to go educate the diabetic
Well, right
patient?
now my plan is to be a diabetic educator.
But you don't intend to go back practice as a normal pharmacist, right?
Right. Oh, I'd like to get my pharmacy license back because they said unless that's resolved, I can't take the test to be a certified diabetic educator.
But my question is that you just be an educator instead of go pharmacy practice, right?
Yeah, right now my plan is to go be a diabetic educator. So,
But if you get your license back, you will be just doing that also, right?
well, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't have any plans to do that. I'm not planning to get a job or anything doing pharmacy work, but I don't know if I would ever use it for something else. Maybe I would, but right now my plan is to be a diabetic educator and just to go in that direction.
Okay, no further question. Thank you.
Mr. Brooks.
Thank you. Thank you for coming in. I would be remiss also if I didn't apologize for the tardiness of the day. I know your time is very valuable, as ours is, but I would be remiss if I didn't apologize for that. So thank you for your patience.
Thank you very much.
So back to the fentanyl lollipops. The numbers don't add up to me. And the report says over 100, but you stated that she needed a bridge for 5 days, right? So that bridge for 5 days is at 9 a day. That'd be 45 lollipops. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And then she came back a second and a third time, and you gave her I can't remember the number. I think you said 5 or 6. 5. So that would have been 50. So from what the discrepancy, there was 50 that are unaccounted for. What happened to those?
Yeah, I don't know where the police got that number from, because I know that we carefully just gave her enough for the 5 days and then came back and got 5 more suckers.
But I'm assuming when you were going through this process of losing your license, you would have had the attention to detail to look at that and say, gee, there's a discrepancy over 50 fentanyl lollipops. That's important to me. Why didn't that happen?
I don't know. There was never questioned. The question was never given to me, and I don't remember seeing that number. I don't know why we didn't question it, but nobody ever asked me that question or anything that they talked about. It was never brought up. But I know that we just gave her 9 a day for 5 days and then 5 more.
Well, I mean, the reason,
I don't know where they got that number from.
One of the reasons I asked the question, and as a pharmacist, attention to detail is paramount to patient safety. And if there is a discrepancy, and if someone accused me of speeding and doing 100 miles an hour and I was only doing 50, I would probably bring that up and say, it couldn't have been done at this time. It was heavy traffic on the 405, and there's no way possible I could be with 50 miles an hour, and I think your number's wrong, right?
All right.
And as a pharmacist, I'm struggling right now, trying to figure out if we're just sloppy or you're trying to really help out a patient, but I still can't account for those 50. So that's...
Yeah.
And obviously you don't have a response to that.
Because again, I remember what I gave her. I don't know where they got that number from. What were they saying, over 100? Or are they giving an exact number?
It was over 100.
But then that's just an estimate, right? Because they're just saying over 100.
It was in the findings of fact in the proposed decision on page 2, paragraph 4.
Yeah, I don't know where they got that number from. Okay. And yeah, I should have questioned that, but I don't remember.
And then there is...
aware of that before.
I'll move on to the kind of the doctor shopping, patient shopping, or doctor shopping. Okay. Look at, we don't get all the detail behind that. So I couldn't tell you if 15 people came. You gave one example, and I think it was a very reasonable example of a patient came in sick, multiple doctors within the same doctor group, all giving prescriptions.
Mm-hmm.
But still, when you question that, I mean, logically, I hear where you're coming from, but you have to look after the patient's care. And if a patient is coming in with multiple scripts and you're filling them, and your justification is just because it's from the same doctor group, still wouldn't that raise a red flag to you? And I'm not saying the prescription is bad. I'm not saying it was wrong.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, wouldn't that raise a red flag?
Yeah, it would. And I remember us asking her when she brought the prescription in, oh, well, this is a different doctor. And she'd say, yeah, but it's from the same group over here at the hospital. I see a different doctor every time I got in. So we asked her about that. And, and if we're really kind of concerned, we would call on that. But I remember talking to her about it. And her explanation was that, yeah, I'm seeing a different doctor. Every time I go in there, they have a different doctor see me. And that was the explanation of that.
I mean, and all these cases are all very different. They all have their own unique twist to them, and I understand it. I get that.
And I didn't know we were going to relitigate all these, but I know there was one case with a guy who was a homeless guy. And so he would go to an emergency room and get some Tylenol with codeine. And so every time, and they didn't give him small quantities, go to the emergency room, they give him like 20 tablets or 25 tablets. And this was one of the ones that they put on this list of doctor shopping. Well, it wasn't necessarily a doctor shopper. He didn't have a doctor. He didn't have any money. So he'd go to the emergency room. We had to treat him. And then he'd come in with a script for like 20 tablets. So a few days later, he'd be back with another script, different doctor, different emergency room. And so that was on the list. These are just computer-generated lists of doctors that this guy saw a lot of different doctors in a short period of time. But there was an explanation for it. This guy that was his medical care, was to go to the emergency room and get his prescription.
Yeah, and just because I'm not trying to relitigate a lot of information, we see some of the kind of the highlights, for lack of a better term, and then it's always the details really matter. And I'm not trying to relitigate anything. I'm just trying to get a sense of how you perform your practice.
But I did write up a response to all these different doctor shopping requests that they gave. I went back and looked in the file and wrote up a detailed response to the board at the time of all those different questions. And there was a reason behind every one, why they had gone to different doctors or why they'd gotten this medicine close together. We had documentation on it. And we responded to every one of those and had an explanation as to why he saw different doctors or why these were done close together.
Okay. Thank you. And it's really like sidebar is you had checked, you had been convicted before, and the counselor had, corrected you. You're not the first person to mischeck that box. And I thought we had clarified it of, past and current convictions.
Oh.
So you're not the first person who's done that. So
Okay.
we'll leave it at that.
Thank you.
All right. Ms. Serpa.
No questions.
Mr. Lippy.
I'm just wondering, on question number 16, it said, list the date of revocation of your license and explain fully the cause of the disciplinary action. And your explanatory page here refers only to that one case where you advanced the prescription or advanced the suckers.
Right.
But it doesn't talk about all of the other.
Because at the civil trial, which I went through first, they dropped all those other cases. The only thing they charged me with was one count of advancing those 5 suckers to the
No, I'm talking about the reason your license was revoked.
Yeah, and but because the civil case dropped all those
dropped
charges.
all of them?
They dropped all those charges. Only thing I was charged with was one count of those 5 suckers that I advanced to the patient. It was the only thing they charged me with. And the judge was going to allow me to go back to work, and so the DA called the Board of Pharmacy and said, oh, he's going to let him work. So then they stepped forward and revoked my license. But so that's why.
So the corresponding responsibility had
instance.
nothing to do with it? These corresponding responsibility items had nothing to do with
In the civil case, yeah, they were totally dropped. My thing from the court shows of all deemed dismissed and only charged me with one count of advancing those 5 suckers.
Okay, I have no more questions.
Mr. Law.
Okay, Mr. Miles, first I want to thank you for being here today, and I also apologize for the delay of the proceedings.
Thank you.
I do have a few questions for you. Now, on your providing the suckers to the patients based on your sympathy of the patient, Now, that caused you to have the violation of the law. Were you not aware of the violation, or you were just...
No, I understood that it was a violation of the law, and unfortunately, I know my feeling was at the time was, yeah, this is wrong, but I felt that the health of the patient kind of required this. And I thought, the board's not going to be happy, but I thought they would understand my intent. I mean, I was wrong. I did break the regulation.
Apparently, the board wasn't
I
happy.
admit that I did it, but I hope they at least understand my intent was to try to help somebody, not any nefarious reason.
Let me just say, so that we have a clear recording of what's being said, I'm going to ask that people try not to talk over each other. And so go ahead, Mr. Law.
Okay, so knowing that you have sympathy for the patient, next time when you see circumstances like this, what would be your proper way to handle this?
Trust me, I've learned from this, and I would not break a regulation even to help somebody who I felt needed. I would have, made more of an effort maybe to get a hold of her doctor, made more of an effort to resolve it in another way. That's what I should have done. I kind of took a shortcut to just fix this problem, and that's where I was wrong.
Okay.
And I wouldn't do that again. I would.
And also based on the record, it mentioned that it's been like 9 years since you haven't done the biannual inventory report. Could you explain to us what happened?
Well, there was a more current report in there, but when the police did their look for it, they saw an older one. But it was, even the one that was more current was still like a year old, too old. And so we had just been negligent in keeping those up to date. But there was a more current one in there, but even that one was like 3 years. It should be every 2 years. It was like 3 years old. So
Yeah.
we were negligent. We should have had that done more current.
And how about the other reports like self-assessment, quality assurance, or cures? Will you update too on that part?
And I'm not sure I understand the question.
There were other reports that you're supposed to do too, like the self-assessment, quality assurance, besides the biannual inventory reports.
Yeah.
Were you updated on those too at that time?
Yeah, we've been keeping those up, or had been keeping those up to date, and had those in the file.
Did your pharmacy check the cures at that time?
We had cures up and running, and we were checking cures at that time. Yes.
Okay. Now, are you aware of the new law that regulates the Schedule II prescriptions?
Yeah, I understand that.
Do you know how often that you have to do a report on the Schedule IIs?
Because I know that I thought it's every 15 days or something. I know they had made it more often, but I'm not working in the pharmacy right now, so I.
Okay, so
but
actually,
my understanding is that it's 15 days or something like that. And they made it more often.
it's every quarter. Every quarter we have to do the Schedule II's inventory.
Okay, I thought you said okay.
Yeah, not 15 days. Okay, all right. No further questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Schad.
No questions, thank you.
Ms. Butler.
I just have, hello, Mr. Miles. I just have one question. So you're saying it's about 10, 15 cases of corresponding responsibility neglect on your part, and you said you were able to justify all of those cases?
Yes.
Okay.
And Mr. Sanchez.
I would like to just say thank you for coming, and I see you didn't bring an attorney, and you still came up here and gave your presentation. But I want you to know that it's you've had a remarkable career, and all your accomplishments don't go unnoticed. From being a family man to this one incident after so many years is remarkable.
Thank you.
And,
Thank you very much.
I wish you luck. That's all.
All right. Ms. Tulliners, do you have one more question?
Yes, I do. If your license is reinstated and you are placed on probation, would you be able to...
Your microphone is off.
I thought it was loud enough anyway. If your license was to be reinstated and you were placed on probation for a period of time, would you be able to comply with the probationary term that required you to work a certain amount of hours as a pharmacist if you have no intention of working as a pharmacist?
Well, whatever the board required me to do, I would do it. So if you want to put, do that, I would be happy to do that. Whatever you require, I will do it.
In addition to being the diabetic educator that you intend to be?
Somehow I'd work it out and do whatever you guys want me to do.
Okay, thank you.
All right. At this point, then, we'll hear closing statements from the parties. Ms. Tulliners, you'll go first.
Thank you, Your Honor. It just, based on the testimony here and the record before the board, it does seem that Mr. Miles still does not get it, and it doesn't really have a credible explanation for what happened with the distribution of all of those fentanyl suckers. I don't think he has an adequate plan for re-entry into the practice or current knowledge of pharmacy, and that his petition should probably not be granted at this time.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Tulliners. Mr. Miles, a closing statement from you.
Sure, thank you. First, I just want to assure the board that I've learned from this experience, and it's been a tough go, not being able to have a license for a long period of time now. And if I get a chance to have my license back again, I'm a different person. I'd be much more careful. I'm following everything exactly, following the law, checking cures, doing whatever I need to be doing or should be doing to monitor people that could be in the pharmacy. I feel like people deserve a second chance, and that's all I'm asking. Just give me a second chance to prove myself. And if you're willing to do that, I know that you'll be satisfied with the outcome. I've worked very hard for a long period of time, been a really good pharmacist, I feel, for this period of time, and I just need to be more careful that I don't maybe overstep my bounds. I felt sorry for an old lady. I really felt I was helping somebody out, even though I knew I was kind of stepping over the line. But if I get a second chance, I understand that was wrong. I know I did the wrong thing in that, and I apologize for that. I take responsibility for that. It wasn't anybody else's fault. I don't try to make excuses for it, but I just want you to understand my thinking, understand what took place. I'm not trying to excuse it away or say that, I didn't do anything wrong. I don't feel that way at all. I know I broke a board regulation, and I shouldn't have done that. I should have found another way to do it. I kind of took a shortcut, and that isn't right. So I've learned from that. I'm a different person than I was back then. I'm very much more careful. If you give me a chance, another chance, I will not do anything that causes me to come back here or causes you to have to check on me. I can guarantee you that. I just want to leave you with that assurance. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Miles. This matter is now submitted and will be considered by the board in closed session. We are off the record.
Okay, now the board is going to go into closed session, and we're going to reconvene just to adjourn the meeting. So the public, you don't have to stay behind. So you all will be excused right now, and please sign out to receive your continuing education credit. Thank you all for coming.